Welcome to the Hill and Ponton Social Security Disability blog. I'm Natalia, Jofre. I'm the Social Security section here at our law firm.
My name is Shelly Campbell, and I'm the Senior Social Security Attorney here.
So we've dedicated a couple of blogs to talking about the sequential evaluation process, which is basically Social Security's questions or what they're looking at in order to determine if a person is disabled. We're now on to step 3, which is listings.
Right.
What are they, Shelly?
Listings are basically a list of medical conditions. If the individual meets the severity of the listing for their medical condition, they're disabled. It doesn't matter their age, it doesn't matter what type of work they used to do or whether they could be retrained. All of that is irrelevant. If they meet a listing, the process stops at step 3 and the person is disabled.
Wow. So can you give an example of like a condition and how they would meet the listing?
Sure. Some of the listings are very objective and based on testing. Some others are very subjective and based on symptoms. An example would be for COPD. The listings require that.
What is that?
Chronic obstructive pulmonary
Disease.
Yes, thank you. So for COPD, you have to have a pulmonary function test, and if the levels come back at under a certain level, then you're disabled.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter at that point. The questions stop, and Social Security issues you your benefits. Another example would be for anxiety disorder. There's a listing, but it entails probably 10 to 12 different symptoms and the severity of those symptoms. So in those cases, it takes a lot more to determine whether that person actually meets the listing.
Because I would guess it's much easier if you have an objective finding where you can say, in this medical record or in this test, it says so much, black and white, versus subjective findings like the severity of an anxiety disorder. You're kind of taking the patient's account, their word for it.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that, just so everyone knows, I'd say only about 5% of cases actually meet listings.
Mm-hmm.
And that number is not exact, but it's a very small amount that actually meet listings. And there are a lot of cases that end up meeting listings that don't meet listings at the initial or the reconsideration level.
Mm-hmm.
We can ask for medical expert testimony at hearings. And at that point, we can have the doctor discuss whether or not the person actually meets the listing.
I know that you mentioned like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and oftentimes people can't afford to have like the pulmonary function test, and so Social Security will order one, and that's one of the times that we tell people, yes, go. That's an expensive test. It's basically going to measure how well you can breathe, how much you can breathe, or what your lung capacity is. So you want that. You want that objective finding.
That's correct. And just remember that if you do not meet a listing or you're not at that severity, that there are 2 more steps to determine still, even if you don't meet a listing, whether or not you can actually work on a substantial basis.
So we use COPD as an example, but obviously there are umpteen amounts of conditions and different rules, and each one has their own set of rules that you can meet, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be talking more about the sequential evaluation process in future blogs. Feel free to stay tuned for those. For now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.